The claim I am refuting is that abortion negatively affects society in America. She claims that abortion causes women to suffer emotionally, spiritually, and physically, that abortion negatively influences the economy and legislation, and that abortion further demoralizes our society. However, I believe that abortion does not negatively affect America. Our first claim is that women suffer emotionally, spiritually, and physically from abortion. She uses evidence from Elisa Endra's essay to prove her point that women that get abortions often suffer from hemorrhage and injury, infection, and bleeding. It increases the chance of breast cancer. And she uses Jessica Lawler's research that future pregnancy failure is increased by 45%. Firstly, a study conducted by Dr. David Grimes, a clinical professor in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of North Carolina School of Medicine, found that complications such as postpartum hemorrhage, infections, and high blood pressure disorders were common in women choosing to continue their pregnancies. This shows that abortion has become more refined and much safer than it has before, to the point that things like hemorrhage and infections are not valid points to be an issue. Also, in Jessica Lawler's paper, there is nowhere that states pregnancy failure is increased by 45% by abortion. And in a study conducted by Kaisa Ratikanen, Nona Haizikanen, Seppo Hyman, all of whom are MDs at the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Kuopio University Hospital, found that induced abortions were associated with several known pregnancy risk factors, specifically maternal age older than 35 years, unemployment, unmarried status, low education level, smoking, chronic illnesses. But after logic regression analysis, we found no evidence of adverse pregnancy outcomes. It shows that though abortion has many effects, pregnancy failure was not one of them. And addressing her warrant that women suffer emotionally, she has no grounds, and that according to a study funded by Commonwealth Department of Human Services and Health, found that women in Queensland, South Australia, and Tasmania found that women surveyed generally cope well with abortion. That's screening her one. Secondly, she claims that abortion is negatively affecting the economy and legislation. She says that abortion is such a controversial issue that the government can't help but get involved and must split into a for and against side. And she brings up a quote from Barry Burden, saying that personal experiences and individual characteristics of the legislators have effect on the decision-making process. She then states that the economy is suffering and brings up a quote from Charles Lockhart's book, saying that regulating abortion requires money from taxpayers, and that the tax is high and abortion rates increasing. That would mean less children and in turn less products being made, providing less money for the government. Regarding her point about abortion splitting up legislation, that occurs regardless of the controversy. Any issue is enough to split the legislators, enough so that in 2012, it has been deemed that it's been the least productive year for the legislation branch, because they only passed 61 bills out of the 3,914 bills, according to USA Today's analysis of records. So this shows that the legislation process is ineffective regardless of the bill or controversy. Regarding her second warrant, that because of more abortion equals less children, which in turn results in less money being spent to stimulate the economy, that is entirely based on hypothetical. This is assuming that if a parent had children, they would have enough money to buy vital things such as school supplies or college. And abortions also can help stimulate the economy because each abortion costs $300 to $950, according to Planned Parenthood. Her third supporting claim is that the acceptance of abortion will further demoralize our society. She states that if more women undergo abortion, the morals of our society will plummet. She brings up a quote from Judith Blake's book, stating that the public tends to think abortion means solely for the reason of birth control. She then brings up a quote by Mary Boyle, saying that abortion is disregarding life and that it is responsible for many of society's ills. Chris awards that it harms women, government, the economy, and the once was baby. To begin with, Judith Blake is wrong, as shown in a 4-year experiment conducted in Missouri, led by Dr. Jeffrey Pepper, a professor at Washington University School of Medicine. He found that given access to widely available contraceptives showed that in an area where abortion rates were 41%, after the experiment, abortion rates dropped even lower to 21%. And Mary Boyle was incorrect because abortion has become incredibly safe in that it very rarely harms the women. According to Planned Parenthood, the risk of death from childbirth is 11 times greater than the risk of death from abortion procedure during the first 20 weeks of pregnancy. And after 20 weeks, the risk of death from childbirth and abortion are the same. It doesn't harm government because the process of legislation is a process of agreement and disagreement anyways. It doesn't harm the economy because money is being spent to stimulate it anyways. In conclusion, her supporting claims are that women suffer from, who go through abortion causes women to suffer emotionally, spiritually, physically, and that abortion negatively influences the economy and legislation, and that abortion further demoralizes our society. But they are hampered by lack of credentials, counterclaims, and reasoning fallacies, and that we can conclude that abortion does not negatively affect society.
All right, the secondary claims are all labeled. You go through each of them very clearly. You've got a counterclaim on a couple of points. I thought some of the evidence on the first point was a little bit weak when you were talking about the emotional warrant. You had this comparison of data from, it sounded like Australia, and it was very conclusionary, and I think you could probably use some better information on that point. Your analysis on the second point, mostly you're just listing the advocate's points there. I do think that you have a good point here that all legislation is contentious and that the truth of the matter is that we're already divided. So it's basically not a unique harm that the advocate's talking about in this particular situation. I thought that was relatively solid analysis and an interesting way to respond to the point. The challenge on the economic issue, I think, again, is a little bit weak. I think there's probably some good data that shows that, for instance, unwanted children who are not born might save money in the long run, or if they are born and there are costs involved in doing that. There's always trade-offs. Sure, we might get income from long-term employment, but we also might be paying out for education, healthcare, all those sorts of things, and there might be some way of balancing that. So it just felt like the evidence there was not quite as strong as it could have been. I did like the analysis that you had on some of the evidence, though, and the way you kind of tried to challenge it. I wasn't quite sure how it was that last piece of information applied to the issue of morality, but I do see that it applies generally to the subject that you're talking about. All right, thank you.